Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Happy Monday, all you minties. Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 2 from Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. What we're looking at here is the latest Hulk Omnibus, a book that I didn't think was going to happen, but because of the reprint of the first edition, or the first volume, Marvel was able to say, okay, yeah, enough people are still interested in this particular era. So this is the classic era, the Silver Age era of Hulk. The Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 2. And this comes out everywhere on November 21st, whether it's the book market or direct market. And before I go any further, I'd like to thank the kind folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus so we can look at it together. This one here is the direct market. And when I had a choice between the direct market, and I love Herb Trimpe, like, he's a phenomenal artist, a phenomenal Hulk artist. But with Jim Steranko's cover here, to that big king-size annual. Oh my gosh, this was the cover. So this is the cover to the direct market. On the left-hand side is your cover to the standard edition, the one that's going to be available everywhere. And that one is drawn by Herb Trimpe. And of course, the spines are different. And since they've been reprinting these Silver Age books, and whenever we have a new Silver Age, almost Bronze Age sometimes, we do have the new spines. So for example, here's the new printing of the Incredible Hulk Omnibus Volume 1. I got FOMO'd. I had to go and buy it because I was like, well, what if we get a Volume 3 one day and I don't have Volume 1? Anyway, you all know how that goes. But here we have the Marvel Omnibus, the Incredible Hulk, and then of course the creators, Lee, Thomas, Mary Severin right there, and Trimpe for her right there, and then that particular picture again, it's like a landscape picture that they're using for these, and then the back of the omnibus right here. So let's take a closer look at it. Actually, no, well, what I wanted to do was see what it looks like underneath the dust jacket, compare to this was, because you know, in the Avengers and the X-Men reprints, we've had like the X-Men logo and the A for Avengers logo in the back. This time around, underneath the dust jacket, it looks like they've changed the logo. And speaking of dust jacket, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the flaps here. So over here, it gives you a little idea as to some of the stories collected in here. And then a bio on the creators like Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Herb Trimpe, Mary Severin, and Gary Friedrich. My goodness, Roy Thomas is kind of, I think he's the only one we've got left from that era. Oof, he is a treasure. Okay, so here's what it looks like underneath the dust jacket. Again, the logo has changed from this like Silver Age look, but I think logos are going to change as they change within the single issues when they were coming out. The spines of the books looking a little bit different. I believe they use the standard cover spines underneath the dust jacket if you're one of those collectors that wants to have both spines. I don't know if you are or not, or if they even make people like that. And then the back of the books looking at images of the Incredible Hulk. Now, that's a definite Herb Trimpe when he talks about his own art and not drawing eyeballs. So let's go ahead, open this book up, talk about the stories collected in here, and check out this artwork, and then of course we'll look at the build of the book. Alright, let's go ahead and crack this book open. We have the black end sheets right there, the Incredible Hulk. I love this image, like I said, that's why I went with the direct market. And here are the credits with Stan Lee, Roy Thomas coming in and starting to write the character, and then eventually writing it on for a long time. Gary Friedrich, Bill Everett, Archie Goodwin, the pencilers and layouts by Mary Severin before she moved on to other projects, and Herb Trimpe, who actually has two introductions in this particular omnibus with Frank Giacoia and Sal Buscema. You also have Giacoia doing the inks, as well as George Tuska. And you can tell when George Tuska does the inks on a lot of the Severin pages here. And in the Herb Trimpe, John Severin and Herb and Sal Buscema coming in as inkers too. And of course, the letterers right here, Art Simek and Sam Rosen. And unfortunately, the colorist uncredited. Here is your table of contents, what you're going to find, and what pages. And speaking of pages, this immediately jumps after the events of the first omnibus. So collected in here is the Incredible Hulk 103 to 134 and annual number 1. And the book has 832 pages. Because remember, if you're wondering, wait a minute, how do they have so many issues of the Hulk? The Hulk started as a mini series, almost like a mini series, I guess. It was the Incredible Hulk 1 through 6. Then they went over to Tales to Astonish, and then Tales to Astonish eventually became the Incredible Hulk, and that's when they officially changed the numbering in 102. So continuing the Tales to Astonish / Incredible Hulk, here we are with 103. So it is a really interesting introduction here when you're reading it. It doesn't spoil anything, but I will say what Herb Trimpe does is he talks about his art at the beginning and how lucky he was. He had just coming, I think he was coming back from the military, and he wanted to work in comics, and they put him into the like nobody at DC wanted to hire him. Like he said, it was really difficult to try to get a job, and he talked about how in Marvel they just said, okay, yeah, you can go work and run some errands and stuff like that, because Marvel was still kind of shaping to be the beast that we know it to be these days. But back then, there were very little offices, and it was just him and a couple of other guys that were kind of like fill-in editors and then fill-in inkers eventually. Uh, and he is really hard on himself, by the way. These are all Mary Severin pages here. He is really hard on his art. Like, he wasn't happy. He talks about the director's cut of movies, and he's like, why is it that director's cuts are just everywhere, right? Like, it's the vision of the director. I would love to do that with my comics. I'd love to go back and redraw my comic books, which is just so weird to hear, because to a lot of people, the name Herb Trimpe and the Incredible Hulk just go hand in hand. This is the start of his stuff, and it's a little rough around the edges, and honestly, there are things that I wouldn't have noticed until he pointed them out, like the eyeballs, or lack thereof. So I find that stuff really interesting. So here is issue 107. So this is the one that's inked by Sid Shores, and it's the second ongoing issue. This one here is inked by George Tuska. However, the breakdowns, like the layouts and stuff, were done by Mary Severin, and then Herb Trimpe drawing it. So, but this is one that I think he started doing the actual layouts and breakdowns. So in these particular issues, you do see the Incredible Hulk fighting characters like the Rhino. This is the cover they use for the standard edition. You see him fighting characters like the Mandarin, and you do see the return of one of his nemesis here in a little bit. This is the big fight with the Inhumans, and of course the king size special number 1, and this is the one that's drawn by Mary Severin as well. But the fight is him fighting the Inhumans. There's a couple of forgetful Inhumans in this, but Maximus plays a role in this, and so does Black Bolt, and you'll see a lot of other appearances through here by different Inhumans. It is funny what some of these, or how some of these characters have just kind of been forgotten through time. But in this particular first part, because it is, I guess they do make it easy for you because there's 3 different introductions, meaning that there are 3 different Marvel Masterworks that are collected in here. So you'll see the Green Goliath go to space, come back, and when he comes back, like I said, he's fighting the Rhino, and the Rhino actually has a team up here a little bit later on. There's an awesome issue that I really liked where it has the Savage Land, so you have Kazar, and of course Nick Fury showing up in here. This is one that I remember he was really hard on this cover. He hated the composition, he hated the way the body is twisted, and of course the lack of eyeballs, which kind of became a thing for him, and then he started drawing some. So I really think it's funny, like, how hard he was on his art, and then he was like, well, I was just trying to get better, and eventually I did, I promise. There's the fight with the Sandman in that particular issue. There is a road trip throughout this particular omnibus too. The Hulk just ends up traveling all over the place, not just in America. He goes to different continents, and it seems like wherever he went, he was always finding some kind of fight and end up being in some kind of, or caught up in some kind of destruction where he was being blamed. And I think I talked a little bit about that when I did the overview of the Epic collections, because it really does feel like it was one thing after the other that he was just running into trouble. And I really like the inks in this one, because he supplies his own inks with the fight against Namor through here. And the return of the Inhumans, and the return of Maximus, and of course, like I mentioned, the return of the leader. So he'll also be fighting characters like Mr. Hyde, and what is a Hulk story without General Thunderbolt Ross and the U.S. Army coming after the Hulk? I do love his machinery, and it was because of the introductions that I started noticing that some of the planes, he just had like all this free reign with the airplanes. He was like, yeah, I was just making up stuff. Planes did really look like that. But as far as like the tanks, he did some research on tanks, is what he said, because he was just fascinated with that particular those particular machines from the military. And also in here, you're going to see him fight the Swamp Beast, the Glob, in this particular omnibus. And here is your third introduction. Now, the third introduction is done by Roy Thomas, who came on board and started writing the stories of the Incredible Hulk when Stan Lee left the book. So this was the introduction in the Marvel Masterworks, and it was written in 2011. Now, since this introductions, earlier on from Trimpe, he unfortunately passed away a couple of years back. All right, we're not going to talk about each issue, but I feel like I need to talk about some of these. This is a really interesting issue because, okay, it's the leader, but it's the Fantastic Four. And in here we have this interesting fight with the Thing. And eventually, what Mr. Fantastic does is he's able to cure Bruce Banner from turning into the Hulk. So I found that to be, well, first of all, it's really early on in the story, and I like the use and the limitations that he gave him. Now, of course, you're probably wondering, wait, why couldn't he do the same thing for the Thing? As a matter of fact, he actually talks about that. All the letter pages are intact in here after, well, I guess when they had letter pages. They are all collected in here. So these particular stories will keep him moving from fighting Namor to Mandarin to the Rhino, the Return of the Leader, Sandman, and of course the Inhumans and then the Savage Land. And it seems like just one bad thing after another. Like he can't be happy. There is a wedding through here, or a wedding issue, but I won't spoil what ends up happening through the pages. And it seems like our Jade Jaw, what did they call him? The Jade Jaw Giant could not get a break back then. It was just one bad thing after another happening to this poor guy. And my point with all the characters that appear through here, the Inhumans, and like I mentioned, the Leader and the Rhino, the Absorbing Man, at the end of the day, still the biggest enemy he has, or Abomination, the biggest enemy that he has is Thunderbolt Ross and the U.S. military. That is the biggest enemy. There's the glob right there that he fights throughout these issues because they keep coming after him. And I've heard some of my viewers say this is when the book got a little bit repetitive. It was before Bill Mantlo took over the run. But I think, there are some good stories in here that Roy worked on. And of course, the evolution of an artist is something that I enjoy seeing throughout these classic collections, because you see the way that, he wasn't even comfortable in his own art. And of course, he had layouts done by Marie Severin. And then when he's just become so comfortable with the Green Goliath. This collection also has the first appearance of Jim Wilson through here, who becomes a big part of the Hulk's life for a while. As a matter of fact, one of the most important stories through Peter David's run is centered around the character of Gene Wilson. In the shadow of Golem right here. And this is a really interesting story too, because it kind of showcases how Roy Thomas wrote The Incredible Hulk a little different than the way that Stan Lee had been writing him. And makes him a little more sympathetic and less focusing on the destruction aspect of things as he was doing. Well, even Roy Thomas was doing that towards the beginning of his run. It gives him like this slightly childlike, innocent demeanor, and I think that's why most people follow the Hulk no matter what. I really like that particular issue. And then, of course, the extras after the letter pages. Breaks my heart we don't have those books out yet. Okay, so we have original art right here by Marie Severin and Frank Giacoia. A cover right here with the original art. And this is a cover production displaying an early version of Marie Severin and Frank Giacoia's artwork. In the final version, the Hulk's eyes and mouth were redrawn to engage with the missing link, and the cover caption was altered to help direct the reader's eye. So yeah, sometimes editors step in and ask, the creators to redraw it. Here's another one. The final version, the Mandarin's upper half, was completely redrawn by John Romita, which happened a lot. I mean, we even see stories of Kirby's Superman at DC had to be redrawn, his face. John Romita, so that his pose was more active and the Hulk felt more threatening. And then Herb Trimpe and John Severin right here, original art. Yes, that amazing cover, which was, of course, later redrawn. This is the Jim Steranko one. And the Hulk's face was redrawn by Marie Severin for the final published art, which is what you see in this cover. Unused cover and original art again. This is the Kazar story. Unused pencils for the cover and original cover art. Color guide by Marie Severin with Maximus there. Cover sketches. Yeah, it is interesting and a lot. It's really sad though to see Herb Trimpe and then what happened in the 90s, right when he was trying to draw, and people were only hiring 90s image style artists. So if you ever saw his art in the 90s, especially through like the Jim Valentino's Guardians of the Galaxy, it's a lot different. I will say that. It's a lot different than this stuff in here. No one knew better than Marvel artists. Oh, this is a really cute story. So Marie Severin would draw a lot of the bullpen folks, a lot of the people working at Marvel Comics, in these little caricatures. And it's just something like that I enjoy as being shared. And she would put it on their desk and stuff, like making fun of them. And apparently, Herb Trimpe was one that was very well known in the office to get picked on by her. So, and he had an obsession with World War I, so she started drawing those kind of things. And then they kept going back, like he would draw something making fun of her. This is the bullpen art right here. Self-portrait of Herb Trimpe and all the characters he had drawn. And then the reprints right here of the Incredible Hulk. Marvel Superheroes 67. Okay, some of them are in thumbnails, and then some of them are in splash pages. And these are just reprints. It's an awesome cover by Ron Wilson and Joseph Rubinstein. Marvel's TV sensation, so reprinting the classic issues. And then that piece right there, which is also here. Your end sheets. Let's talk about the binding and the paper stock. 832 pages, and this is what your eye looks like. This one is printed at the iMac printer. I did notice something with this, though, this particular copy, and that's the paper stock. I want to say it feels like the paper stock they've been using for iMacs here in the last couple of months. It's a little bit thicker than it used to be. However, the bleed through is a little more noticeable in this one than I've seen in some of the most recent books from iMac, especially through light colors and white spaces like this. You can see the panels coming through. I know it doesn't bother everybody, but I am trying to be as thorough as possible. Just whenever there's light colors or whites. Unfortunately, not a lot of spread pages back then, so you can see the gutter curve right there in the frame. So you may have to hold it down a little bit towards the very beginning if there's word bubbles going into, yeah, like right there. But you do have the framing that kind of spaces out the pictures. So that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions. in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments section if you've read the stories in here through the Epic Collections or the Marvel Masterworks or Essential Editions, what you thought about those particular stories. And if you read them in single issues, hell, even better. Let me know what your favorite stories are, what your favorite era of Hulk is, and what other Hulk omnis you would love to see in an omnibus format. Wait, that's redundant. What other Hulk stories or creator-centric books would you like to see in an omnibus format? There, that's better. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.